Hi guys, welcome back to IELTS with Juva. In this lesson, I show you a Band 9 sample answer for a pie chart question in IELTS Writing Task 1. The pie chart is about polar bears in Canada. I will give you many tips to help you boost your band score. By the way, if you want to get your dream IELTS band score, check out my IELTS materials. Here you can find templates, courses, sample answers, and much more to really boost your score. To access the IELTS materials, click on the link in the description. Also, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss the next video. The first IELTS writing task is very hard for many students. You're given visual material, usually a graph or chart. The question is given as a short prompt that asks you to summarize what you see. Pie charts are not the most common type of visual material for IELTS Writing Task 1, but they do show up once in a while. Therefore, it's good to become familiar with them. Let's have a look at the question. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. This graph shows the number of polar bears found in a survey of 4 sites at Western Hudson Bay in Canada. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. Let's go through the prompt step by step so you know what to expect. That will help you become more relaxed during your IELTS. First, the prompt always includes a short statement describing the graph. It may be 1 or 2 sentences. This graph shows the number of polar bears found in a survey of 4 sites at Western Hudson Bay in Canada. It's really important to read this sentence because it tells what the graph is about. I know that there are polar bear numbers from a survey of 4 places. I don't take notes for the prompt, and I usually don't write down anything from the graphs either. You probably are wondering why I don't take notes. It's fine to do so if you want to. For me, writing down the facts wastes too much time. All of the information is in front of me, so I can refer back anytime I want to. It's easy for me to write my answer because I use a template. Templates are amazing because they really boost your IELTS writing band score. A template helps you start your sentences, so you don't have to think about that. It organizes your response and makes sure that you use a lot of vocabulary. I have written templates for all the IELTS writing tasks. You can find them in this course. The next part of the prompt is the question itself. It's a statement telling you what to do. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features, making comparisons where relevant. Notice that you're asked to summarize the information. That means you must describe the main ideas and compare the main features. Do not add any guesses about why the trends might be true and don't include your own knowledge about the topic. I know it's tempting to do so. I bet the polar bear declines are due to climate change. Such data is a warning to be more environmentally friendly in our choices. However, I don't write about anything like that. That's because my personal opinion is not on the pie chart, and the question asks me to summarize what I see. If I write about my own ideas, I will actually get a lower band score. This is the last line of the prompt. Write at least 150 words. Let me just say that at least 150 means more than 150. Some students get confused and write under 150 words. Your answer needs to have over 150 words. If you write less, this may affect your band score. Now that I've said that, you probably wonder how many words you should write. Actually, it's easy to write way too much for the first IELTS writing task. Many students try to include every fact, so their responses become really long. Summaries only need to have the highlights of the graph. If you write too much, it's harder to understand what the main trends are about. I try to write about 200 words for IELTS Writing Task 1. That's enough to make a short and clear summary. In addition, I then have more time for Task 2, which is great. After reading the prompt, I examine the pie chart very carefully. I see two charts and they're labeled with years. There's also a key at the bottom that names the study areas used in the survey. Some people skim quickly over the key, but you can miss really important information that way, so be careful here. Further, there are numbers of bears on the pie chart, and the chart also gives a visual representation of the data. While looking at the chart, I try to find something interesting to talk about. It's easier to write my response if I have a focus. I see two main ideas I want to talk about. First, the number of bears really decreased over the 10 years. That's an important idea. However, the proportion or percentage of the total bears changes in two places and remains about the same in another. I'm going to talk about two very different ideas, proportion and number. The proportion can change in different ways from the numbers, so I know I must be careful to keep the vocabulary accurate when I'm writing my answer. I think I will start with the number of bears, so I'm ready to begin writing. This pie chart describes the results of a survey of polar bears at 4 locations in Western Hudson Bay in Canada in 2 years, 1985 and 1995. The introduction uses a sentence starter from my template. This pie chart describes: in the first sentence, I give a general description of the graph, and that is easiest to do by paraphrasing the first sentence of the question prompt. Guys, this is important. You must absolutely paraphrase in Task 1. This shows the IELTS examiner that you understand what the chart is about and that you have a large vocabulary. This will improve your band score. Let's check out how I paraphrased here. I changed sites to location to make the wording slightly different from the original prompt. I also added the dates from the charts to make the information more detailed and show that I'm not just copying. I could say from 1985 to 1995, but the reader might think that every year is shown. That's why I used the precise words in 2 years, 1985 and 1995. If the reader cannot see the graph, it's still clear that there is data for only those 2 years. Let's go on. I am now going to give an overview of the chart. This means I describe what's happening in general. Don't give any specific details in your overview. Just describe the main trends you see. First, I discuss the first general trend I find. In general, the number of bears decreased over the 10-year period. In general is a linking phrase from my template that shows that I am giving broad ideas rather than specific details yet. Linking words are amazing because they structure your answer well and they show that you have a large vocabulary. This will improve your band score. I also want to mention 10-year period. This is an awesome way to show off your writing skills. Why? Because 10-year period must be written with a hyphen. And by using a hyphen, you show the IELTS examiner that your English is amazing. Why do you have to use a hyphen here? For example, if you say, I worked for 10 years, there is no hyphen. That's because 10 acts as an adjective and years is a noun. In 10-year period though, period is the noun. 10-year is an adjective that describes the period in more detail. When using two words together as an adjective, you have to use a hyphen. That's very advanced English. Another example is a long-awaited dinner or hard-earned reward. The dinner is not long and the reward is not hard, so the adjectives are not used separately. Grammatical details like this are a great way to boost your IELTS writing band score. I will be talking about one more idea in the body of the response, so I add one more sentence to the introduction to signpost. However, one region experienced a minor increase in its bear population. However is an awesome linking word that I use a lot. It shows that the following information is a contrast to the previous information. Linking words help you structure your answer well and show the IELTS examiner that you have a broad range of vocabulary. So you should absolutely use them. The expression "a minor increase" helps me describe the chart more precisely, which will improve my band score. I did change the number of bears to bear population for variety in my vocabulary. I try to eliminate repeating the same words again and again. That's plenty for the introduction, which just needs to say the main ideas I will talk about. Now I move on to the body of the answer. By the way, if you want to get your dream IELTS band score, check out my IELTS materials. Here you can find templates, courses, sample answers, and much more to really boost your score. To access the IELTS materials, click on the link in the description. Also, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss the next video. First, there was a considerable drop in the total number of bears in the overall Western Hudson Bay area. I indented the first line and started with first. Giving my answer a great structure makes it easy to follow the argument. I want to point out that there was a huge decrease in the number of bears, so I used considerable drop. You can really change the tone of the writing just by selecting different words. Further, I included overall Western Hudson Bay area to show that I'm talking about all of the regions. Next, I'm going to add more detail in the following sentence. To be specific, the population fell by about a third from 881 polar bears in 1985 to only 575 10 years later. I used fell to show off that I know different vocabulary for decreased. I said by about a third because I'm not quite sure about the exact percentage, but that is fairly close. About is a great way to soften the claim so no one thinks I'm giving precise numbers. I would also like to point out 10 years later. I could say in 1995. But the sentence is full of numbers already, which makes it hard to read for many people. You have to compare the numbers to see how long the period was. This way, the reader knows it was 10 years and focuses more on looking at the number of bears. I am now ready to move on to the next idea, the differences in proportions. It's interesting to note that despite the sharp decline in numbers, the proportion of bears remained stable in two of the study areas, Cape Tatnam Southeast and Churchill North. These accounted for about half of the total bears. Sharp decline and remain stable are awesome vocabulary words that help me describe the chart precisely. I wanted a good linking word for this sentence to show that the following information is rather different from what I've been talking about before, but it isn't a contrast. Therefore, I used "it is interesting to note that despite" to show that even though this one thing happened, something else occurred. Moreover, I wanted to show that these two study areas were about half of the total bears, but didn't really want to add an extra sentence. I want to focus more on the changing populations in the other two areas. Therefore, I used a semicolon. Semicolons can join two related ideas into a sentence. Be sure that the part in front of the semicolon and the part after it are both complete sentences that can stand on their own. Semicolons create complex sentences that really can boost your band score if you use them correctly. Here's the next sentence. Meanwhile, the proportion of bears found in Churchill's southeast dramatically decreased from approximately a quarter to about an eighth of the total population. You can see that I'm guessing the amounts rather than using exact figures. Approximately is another way to say about, but it's more complex and will boost my band score. Dramatically shows that there was a very big change. It makes the decline in percentages sound really serious. I'm still trying to emphasize the problem of fewer polar bears, and so I deliberately select words like those to make my point. I could have given the exact number for each of these populations at each year, but then my response would become long and harder to follow. I'm trying to summarize the overall trends, not give each fact. On to the next sentence. By contrast, the number of Cape Tadnam North bears actually increased slightly over the same time period. You guessed it, by contrast is also from my template. It shows that the following information is different from what has preceded. That way, the reader is not surprised by the fact that one polar bear population increased. I'm very careful to say that the number increased slightly. I'm still emphasizing the point that bears are in decline in general, so don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself. Instead of repeating the years again and again, I used same time period in this sentence. Let's check out the next sentence. Even though there were only 6 more bears in Cape Tadnam North, its percentage of total bears increased from about a quarter to about a third. Even though shows that something happens despite something else. Only 6 more bears makes the increase appear very small. I again used the approximate sizes of the sections on the pie chart, quarter and third. That allows me to demonstrate to the IELTS examiner that I can use numbers effectively. The end result is a sentence that shows that there was a big change in the percentage of bears in the one area, but the actual number of bears was almost the same. That's all I want to say in this response. I'm ready to move on to the conclusion. Comparing the charts, it is clear that overall there was not only a significant reduction in the polar bear population in the western Hudson Bay area between 1985 and 1995, but also a change in the distribution of the animals. A conclusion is not required in Task 1, but it makes your answer sound more complete and more professional. It isn't hard for me to write a conclusion because I use a sentence starter from my template. Comparing the charts, it is clear that overall. I then summarize the 2 main ideas, the reduction in the population and a change in the distribution. Distribution is a complex vocabulary word I added to show off my language skills. The animals eliminates repeating polar bears. I'm paying attention to the last sentence to leave the IELTS examiner with a good impression of my writing ability. I also used a great sentence structure, not only, but also. This is an awesome way to show that two things happened. The important point is to make sure that the parts you add have the same grammatical structure. The part after not only is a significant reduction. That's a noun with a lot of words modifying it. I therefore check that the part after but also is a noun. A change is parallel because it is indeed a noun. I'm glad that the writing is done. However, I always take time to proofread for grammatical and spelling errors. Plus, I reread to see that my linking words and adjectives emphasize my point. Without good linking words, there is just a list of ideas with no indication of how they are related to each other. Finally, I also check the word count to see that there are over 150 words. Since there are 235, I have written plenty. In fact, I often write much less. Don't forget these details after writing. They are essential steps for a high IELTS writing band score. That's it. That's how to write an answer for a pie chart question that gets you a band 9 in IELTS Writing Task 1. By the way, if you want to get your dream IELTS band score, check out my IELTS materials. Here you can find templates, courses, sample answers, and much more to really boost your score. To access the IELTS materials, click on the link in the description. Also, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss the next video.